Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. For those of you who have been partying with us for the last several years, we are moving toward 1,000 episodes, which means we've had a whole lot of folks on our podcast. We've had overcomers, we've had survivors, we've had people who have lost loved ones, we've had people who have dealt with identity challenges, we've had people who have dealt with faith crisis, we've had people who have dealt with forgiveness. We've had people who've become incredibly successful in athletics. And yet today, we bring on a person who checks every one of those boxes and so much more. The more I get to know our guest story, the more in awe I am of him, of what he's overcome, and what he's doing with his life today. So, my encouragement on the front side of this conversation is to buckle up. You're going to be in for a wild ride. I want you to grab your favorite Live Inspired journal and pen. I want you to open up your mind and your heart because you are about to be blown away by the life and the humility and the love of my friend and soon to be yours. His name is Harold Dennis. Harold, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
John O'Leary, good morning, sir. I appreciate you having me on. What an introduction. And by the way, I'm going to grab my favorite pen too. I'm a lifelong learner, and I think you're interviewing me today, but I can learn so much from you too. And you might see me jot a note or two down because I can get so many pearls from your life. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's do this. If you were to introduce yourself, maybe you and I bump into each other in a grocery store at a sideline of a football game or whatever it might be. And I'm like, hey, man. And I tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do. If you were to say, yeah, man, I'm Harold Dennis, what do you follow that with?
Oh, wow. So great question. I really have stiff arm or rejected or hated to define who I am in my life in a certain way. There's so many layers to who we are. And I know that may sound cliche, but it would be a 30-minute conversation with you getting into who is Harold Dennis, because we start to talk about the things we've experienced in our lives and who's affected us and what our aspirations and goals and purposes are. So there's a lot there. But, John, I'm a humble guy from Kentucky that's lived a very interesting life, a very blessed life, and consider myself a survivor in a way, but just want to leave footprints, you know,
Hmm.
just want to leave footprints.
Man, I'm telling you, when our friends listening to our conversation are watching us right now hear this story, they're going to be blown away that you lead with, I'm a humble guy from Kentucky who's lived a blessed life. Because as you go through your story, it's so clear how difficult so many chapters within that blessed life were. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to not start with the life you're living today, which is so obviously blessed, and some of those successes you've had along the way, which are so clearly blessed. But we're going to back the moving truck all the way out of where you live right now. We're going to start in Nashville. We'll eventually move to the East Coast and then bring you back into Kentucky. But you were born in Nashville.
That's right. Born in Nashville. All my mother's roots are there in Nashville. That's the birthplace. That's originally home. Grew up just north of the city, Nashville. We grew up in the ghetto. I mean, it was Section 8 housing, and we meager means. But my father, who was military, Army, he was stationed in Fort Knox not long after, well, into my toddler years. So around the late 70s, early 80s, we moved to Fort Knox and began our life there in Kentucky.
I understand that one of the things that happened in Fort Knox is your mom and dad began to separate a little bit and they eventually divorced. And that's another life-changing moment in your life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was, and a lot of families have experienced that, right? You're young, and that family unit that, as you know it, sort of changes. The outlook changes, and so I was raised by my mom and single parent home, and have an older sister, 3 years older. But when they divorced, we moved to a little small transient town called Radcliffe. So it's a little small town between Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and Fort Knox. Not a whole lot in Radcliffe. It's very rural, lots of pawn shops and car dealerships. It was about what you see in Radcliffe, but it was home. It was home. It was home. Small rural town, like I said. And I grew up in a mobile home park. My mom was, high school education and doing what she could to support my sister and I. But we lived in Madison Mobile Home Park in Radcliffe, and that
Can I ask
was
you about that? Like as a kid
yeah,
growing up in
yeah.
a mobile home park, you now as an adult, like the whispers, the perspective on growing up in a mobile home park. I'm curious, as a kid growing up there, did you feel like you got a short end of the stick somehow?
That's a really great question because the short answer is no. The short answer is no, and that's interestingly reflecting back on that. Had several friends who lived in the suburbs and whose families were a little bit different, and they had a house and they had a basement, and we'd have sleepovers over there. So, but I was never made to feel any different from that close knit
Okay.
subset of friends. I didn't know any different, and so within that mobile home park, we had our crew, we had our friends, we that was home, and so in a lot of ways. I'm glad I experienced that and grew up that way and just gained a respect for life and for difference and for the work that my mom put into
Right.
coming out of that, if you will.
So I, as a child, pretended to be athletic. You actually were. So that's where our stories begin to diverge a little bit. You were gifted, man, as an athlete, soccer, baseball, eventually track. When did you first recognize that you're a little faster than everybody else around your home and in your community?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, that was one thing about the mobile home park is we didn't have a huge neighborhood to sort of play in. So everyone was right on the same street.
Right.
And it's as you would expect. We gathered in the street and we played kickball and threw the football around. And so with time, I and my friends began to recognize that, man, this Harold's got some wheels on him. And so, it was initially playing kickball in the street, I would say, would be the first inclination. And then my mom wanted to find something for me to do. I had all this pent up energy, and she's like, we need to find a sport for you. Okay, we need to find something you can do. And soccer signups were easy. I had a couple of friends who were playing soccer. The field was close to our mobile home park, so it wasn't a far walk or bike ride to get to the fields. And so soccer it became. And they found out pretty quickly we're going to put Harold in the striker position and let him run past people. Let him run past people.
Right. Our version of Harold was David, and there's just something about speed when you're a kid, man. Even if the skills aren't quite there yet, you ended up with both. You end up playing this throughout your young years, and you're getting ready to continue playing in high school. I mean, this is a tough time for the most handsome, most athletic, most astute kid as you transition from junior high on high school. And you're getting ready to make this launch when your life is about to change in profound ways. So I'm going to have you take us back to a couple things, man. One is your buddy Andy. Then walk us through May and talk about church camp, talk about that bus ride, talk about the day at the park that was one of the better days of your life and then becomes one of the worst days of your life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in Mazda Mobile Home Park, a few trailers down, it was Andy who's one of my best friends. There's Andy and there's Quentin and there's Mike and there's Juan, of which um, three of the four of those names were with me on that bus that we're gonna talk about later. But
Wow.
Andy was a close friend, a good friend, not just a good friend, but he was a great athlete too. So Andy was a football guy, and he always tried to get me to play football, and I never would. I just was so ingrained into soccer, and the two conflicted, right? And they're both fall sports,
Mm.
winter sports, and so I never would give up fall soccer to play football. And it was that relationship with Andy and the fact that he played football and I didn't. I played soccer that really became one of the most influential
Wow.
dichotomies and experiences or friendships in my life. But so my mom was able to afford her first house in 1987. And so we lived in that mobile home park for about 6 years. And my mom was finally able to afford her first house. And we moved down the road to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. When I moved there, Andy stayed, and my other friends were still living in the mobile home park. I'm talking to Andy one day, and he says, man, I want to get baptized. I want to get baptized. He was going through some things, and he said, I'm going to do it on Mother's Day. I'm going to do it as a gift to my mom. He chose to do it at First Assembly of God Church, which was a church right down the road from Mazda Mobile Home Park.
Okay.
This this wasn't a church we were members of, but it was close, and he wanted to get in the church. So Andy chose to get baptized on May 8th, 1988. And it was at the church that day we found out about a summer trip that the church always took to Kings Island.
What is
So
Kings Island for the folks listening who don't know what that place is?
yeah, so Kings Island is an amusement park in Cincinnati, Ohio. Cincinnati is about 2 hours north of Radcliffe, Kentucky. And so Kings Island was always a place that we always wanted to get to.
Yeah.
And so First Assembly of God was sponsoring this trip, and it was going to be the next week. It was going to be the following Saturday. That was as you can imagine, a life-changing day for Andy to get baptized. All of us there to witness it. His mom there to witness it on Mother's Day. Did it as a gift to his mom. And little did we know what the following week would
Mm.
hold. And take you through that week a little bit. So we find out about the trip, and we're like, it costs money, obviously, right? You got to come up with a little bit of money, spending money. So I asked my mom, "Hey, mom, we want to go to Kings Island next weekend with the person of God." And she said no. She said, "I'm sorry, I don't have and Bubba, I'm gonna hear me say Bubba on occasion. Bubba was my nickname growing up. Bubba, I don't have the money, the extra money to send you and Kim because my sister wanted to go. And we put the full court press on her, as you could understand, all week long. Mom, please, please, please." And so she came home from work that Friday, May 13th, and told us, surprised my sister and I, that she was going to let us go on this trip to Kings Island. I got on the phone, the landline, of course, and I called Andy and I said, "Man, we're going. We're going." We were elated, ecstatic, couldn't wait to go. And so that Friday night, actually, I stayed the night back in Mazda Mobile Home Park at Andy's trailer. Me, Andy, Quentin, Juan, a couple other guys stayed the night there at Andy's trailer and got up Saturday morning and walked over to the church.
May 14th, 1988.
May 14th,
A
1988.
day, by the way, when I told one of my colleagues, Meredith, she works with me now, but she grew up in Cincinnati. She knew this story as soon as I brought up that date. So this day is one that changed your life and my coworker's life and countless other lives. So this is a big
Yeah.
moment, man. So I've heard you share in the past that it was a gorgeous day, that there's a buzz as you're getting onto this bus, that there's a prayer offered by the pastor for protection and safety and joy, that you board this bus, you go a couple hours up to Cincinnati, and you have the time of your life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We walk over to the church that morning, and it's a day that I describe as the first day of the rest of my life, to be honest. We board the bus, and the pastor says a prayer, and we start our trek north I-71 up towards Cincinnati. Just as you said, John, you hold on to the positive memories of that day, the fellowship. Essentially, every kid in the town was there, went. A lot of friends, 67 of us on the bus that day. Hold on to those memories, the rides, the beasts, the twin racers, the funnel cakes, chasing the girls around and flirting with the girls that day, and all those things you hold on to. Um, I hold on to from that day. But long, exhausting day at Kings Island. Dusk was starting to set in, and so we knew it was time to make our way back toward the bus. As we're walking back toward the bus, one of my friends had the bright idea of, let's try to get on one more ride. And it was a water ride. And the line was too long. So we didn't have time, but there was a bridge that at the bottom of that ride where this tube comes down the slide and hits the water. And so if you stand on that bridge, you get splashed with the water. And so we said, all right, let's go stand on the bridge real quick and we'll just get splashed with water. Then we'll hurry back to the bus. And so that's what we did. Stood on the bridge, comes down, boom, we get splashed. Okay. And then head back to the bus. That's relevant because when we got to the bus and boarded the bus, all the seats in the back were taken. Because when you're that age, on a bus, everybody wants to sit in the back because that's where all the
Cool kids
mischief
go to the
happens.
back, man.
Cool,
That's right.
cool kids go to the back. That's where all the mischief happens, right? So all the seats in the back were taken. The only seats that were available were about rows 6 and up toward the front. And what we didn't know at that time, John, that we found out later was that where you sat on the bus that night literally determined your fate,
Yeah.
literally determined your fate. And so the seat that was open for us, me and Andy, was row five behind the driver. There was a young man we met that day by the name of Aaron, and Aaron sat with us. So me, Andy, myself, and Aaron sat in row five. Andy next to the window, me in the middle, and Aaron on the aisle.
Mm.
Yeah.
Man, I know where the story goes, and I'm already almost unable to get the words out to ask the right question next, but you don't know. You're exhausted from the sun, and you ate too much funnel cake, and you chased too many girls, and you got on too many rides, and you're wiped out. So you begin to doze off. It's
Yeah.
the sun is setting. The day's been awesome. You fall asleep. What wakes you up?
So just as you said, my head's down in my lap. It's the only way you could sleep on a bus, right? And I feel a jolt that thrusts me into the seat in front of me. At that time, the first thing that crossed my mind, because I wake up in this disarray, right? I'm asleep. I don't know what happened. And
Right.
all of this as I describe it, as I know you can relate, and I think it's a glimpse into trauma. Anyone who experiences trauma, our brains and minds sort of naturally block out certain things and we remember certain things, bits and
Yeah.
pieces. But as you play it out in your mind and you talk about it, it's almost like it happened in slow motion.
Yeah.
But the reality is, from what I'm about to explain to you to the finality or the last person getting off was less than 2 minutes. I'm thrusting the seat in front of me. I initially feel like that we may hit a deer or something. That's when my first thought that we hit something I knew, but my mind, I'm thinking, did we hit a deer? I sort of come to, and it's almost like there was a pause, like a wipe your brow kind of, man, what just happened? And at that instant, boom, um, the bus was in an inferno.
Can I ask you
And
about that? Because I was curious. The bus did not immediately become an inferno. There was a momentary pause where it seemed like everything was going to be all right, and then it blew up.
that was what it seemed like in my mind. Yes,
Okay.
it was a jolt and sort of a fire starting and then an inferno, not an explosion per se, but an inferno. But let me set the stage. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but I think it's important to sort of set the stage for what happened and why. Down the interstate, as we were heading home, there was a gentleman who was at a bar and he consumed a few too many drinks. Guy by the name of Larry Mahoney.
Um, More than a few too many drinks. I
Yeah,
mean, I've
more
read the
than
reports like this man was annihilated, and not for the very first time.
that's right. That's exactly right. He had more than a few too many drinks. The bartender initially took his keys from him,
Mm.
but he was able to coerce him to give his keys back to him. He gets in his pickup truck and commences to try to drive himself home. So as he attempts to drive home, he enters the interstate I-71 he enters the southbound ramp going northbound. He's heading northbound in the southbound lane of the interstate, heading right directly towards oncoming traffic. He passed multiple cars and traveled about 2 miles intoxicated, comes around a blind curve and hits our bus head on. And so that was the impact that we all felt. We hit Larry Mahoney's truck head on. The driver of our bus, John Pierman, uh, rest in peace. Um, the investigation and reports illustrated that by the time John saw the headlights coming, Mr. Mahoney coming to him, he had about 3/4 of a second to try to avoid it, and he simply couldn't. And so the impact occurred right over the uh, the wheel well that pushed the tire of the wheel well into the door and punctured the gas tank.
Mm.
And from the impact, the crash punctured the floor. Once you punctured the gas tank, that allowed fumes to come up inside of the bus, and it became an inferno really quickly. And so once I realized what was happening, my first thought was, can I get out of a window?
Yeah.
Can I get out of a window? And you know, the buses in those days where you have these two clasps when you're trying to pull these two white clasps together to get this window down, that's hard to do in a normal setting,
Yes.
right? But in
Yeah.
the midst of an inferno with 67 people and essentially one exit because the front is on fire, we didn't have the roof. We didn't have the roof exits. We didn't have the push out windows on the side. We had 67 people that had to get out of one exit, and that was the back. So I tried to get out of a window. I was unsuccessful with that. And I knew at that moment, my only option was the back, was the
Mm.
exit. And I'm in row 5. I had one choice and I went after it. And so I began to climb and claw and fight and push and pull and make my way back to the rear of the bus. As you can imagine, 67 people all converged to the aisle right at that rear exit. And so it bottlenecked. First of all, getting to the back of the bus was nearly impossible. But if you were lucky enough to get to the back of the bus, which I was somehow, bodies were piled from the floor to the ceiling. And I met a gentleman in the hospital um, who came to visit me, and he told me his story.
Yeah.
And his story was he and his wife were driving home, and they see this crash on the side of the road, and they pull over, and he runs over and does what instincts tell him to do, and that's to try to save as many as he can. And so he explains to me how he sees arms and legs and screaming and coming out of the back of the bus. He puts his foot up on the bumper and he just starts grabbing arms, grabbing legs, and doing everything he can to save people. And my arm stood out to him. He grabbed my arm and pulled, and he explained to me how he pulled. Uh,
Yeah.
he pulled 2 to 3 times, and about the third time, myself and several other bodies come out and hit the asphalt. I remember hitting that asphalt. I couldn't see a thing because of the burns to my face. My eyes were swollen shut, but I could hear. I could hear. And I remember hearing the chaos and the screams and explosions, and I just ran. I
Mm.
ran. I remember running in the median, ran down to the grass, and someone grabbed me, laid me down, and they started their medical procedures. Someone came over to me and they said, Kim, and that's my sister. They said, Kim, she's okay. Kim, she's okay. And so I'm laying in the median in the grass, and I can remember feeling the blades of grass poking me in the back where I had burns on my back, my left shoulder and scapular area, just feeling like knives. I was flown to Cosair Children's Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. John, I know you, you know, and the other listeners, anyone that's been through things like this, you start to visualize it, and it start to peel back the scars, and um, it brings back your own memories. But um, flew me to Cosair, and that's where I spent the next 3 months of my life fighting, and I know we're gonna get to it, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it, and that is that Andy sitting right next to me, he didn't make it. He didn't make it, and um, that it's it's still taken me
Yeah.
this many years to. I still grapple with that. I still wrestle with that. But I spent the next 3 months in Cosair Children's Hospital in Louisville.
Oh man, Harold, there's so much to unpack, and my heart just is tired from that story. Like it just hurts to imagine what you went through and the loss of lives and how senseless this thing is. You mentioned Andy. Andy doesn't make it, and he's not alone in not making it. Tell us about the accident itself and how many lives were claimed.
A total of 27 lives were lost. Mostly kids our age, 10 to 18. It was just, it was just devastating, just unbelievable. It was a miracle that 40 of us did survive. Uh, the majority of the survivors were in the back of the bus near the rear exit. But from where I sat, I'm going to say rows 6 and up, there were very few survivors. But 27 lost their life. I remember the way I found out. I had been upgraded to the burn unit at Cosair, and there had been a memorial service in Radcliffe. Obviously, the funeral services and the memorial service, and someone recorded it, VHS, and so there was uh, my mom had brought a TV in my room and a VCR,
Mm.
and she popped the VHS tape in there, and I got to watch some of the memorial service, and that was how I learned the magnitude of what had happened. There's so many lives lost, and you know,
And there are not words for that kind of grief. My gosh. A small little community where all the children go off for this day and the fun and the sun and the funnel cake, and a couple dozen don't come home.
that's right.
So I know you can't deal with the grief of others, of other families, of their loss, of what they've endured, of what they miss every single time they think of their little one. But you know what your pain's like. I want to talk in a moment and ask you in a moment about your physical scars, because that's a grief that you and I share of what that's like to recover from first the agony of healing, but ultimately the journey to become whole again. But before you even do that, man, you're in this bed watching this memorial service for 27 friends, including your very best friend. What's it like knowing that you fell asleep on this evening with your best buddy next to you, and now you're watching this memorial where they're sending him to his eternal resting place?
Yeah, so much to unpack there. Um, it's numbing. It's numbing. I'm in disbelief. Um, I'm angry. I'm hurting physically. I'm confused. We're at we're in church last weekend, and Andy's baptized, and now he's dead.
Yeah.
How? Um, why? Help somebody help me understand this. But I'm confused. I'm angry. I'm questioning so many things.
Yeah.
You just want answers. You just want answers, and they're not coming.
For sure.
They're not coming. And so you bring those close to you closer, right? And mom and my sister who did survive, she had some minor injuries, smoke inhalation injuries, and but she did survive. But you bring those close to you closer, and as you just take it day by day, trying to muster up the strength to get out of bed and walk, number one, and face the next dressing change.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I know you. It's just, uh,
It's so hard, man. I mean, I know a lot of our listeners, we've obviously got a lot of folks who listen to our show and watch our show have been burned. But for those who haven't, the agony of a bandage change is it's just unimaginable. Not only is the pain intense, you know what they are cleaning is utter brokenness, and eventually it will become uh, grotesque scars as a child. Like that's what you're thinking about yourself and your future. And so not only has this event claimed 27 of your buddies, but I'm sure as a kid, man, you're thinking, man, it's also claimed my future. My face was burned beyond recognition. I'm done.
yeah, that's exactly right. Burn survivors go through so much psychosocial. Let's put the physical aside, but the psychosocial aspects. You've got the injury itself, and then you've got, if you're fortunate enough to have any good skin left on your body, now you've got the graft sites that are going to help heal the burn sites. And some are not as fortunate as you've experienced, John. And there were Aaron sitting right next to me. Aaron was burned a larger percentage of his body than me. He did survive, but Aaron sustained, I don't know the percentage, but a large percentage of his body was burned, um, trying to save his brother who did pass away. But burn survivors deal with so much. And like you said, John, what I learned, the way I learned about my face, so I hadn't seen my face yet, right? So I'm dealing with everything. I knew obviously the burns and where they were located and these dressing changes to my face daily.
Yeah.
And so the nurses were instructed not to have any mirrors around in the room. And one day I guess one day there was a nurse that didn't get the memo, and I was young and persistent. And I asked one of the new nurses for a mirror, and she brought me one. My mom tells this story the best, but she left the room to go get a cup of coffee. As she's coming around the corner back to the room, she hears me scream. And that scream came from me looking in that mirror for the first time
Yeah.
and learning about the scars to my face. And you can't put that into words, right, John? At that time, and it's hard to now, but it was devastating. It was devastating. Amidst everything else, what am I going to do now? Look at me now. What am I going to do? Uh, how am I going to face society? I'm a monster.
Yeah.
All these things. All right. All these things.
You've had a lot of mentors, a lot of friends, a lot of folks who showed up for you in mighty ways, but also this idea of reclaiming who you once were and who you could become again becomes part of your formation going forward. You're this kid, man, getting ready for high school when the accident takes place, when your friends all pass away, and when you lose your physical identity. But as you went back after 3 months of hospitalization to school, a year after that, amazing. I was blown away when I read this about you. A year after returning to school, you returned to sports. You returned to who you were. I, I'm,
Yeah.
I, I would have hidden, man. I did hide for the majority of my young life in so many regards. You, you just said, "Here I am, man. Come on, let's go." I'm amazed at your courage as a child.
I didn't know it at the time, but I had a glimpse of clarity. There were so many things that were murky and gray for me, but finding some sense of normalcy was not gray. The way I was going to do that was just ultra clear for some reason. Like that, I didn't know then, but I know now. A lot of it had to do with that connection with Andy and how we grew up playing sports, different sports. But I knew that that was who I was. It was part of
Right.
me. And so I was determined. Okay. I was determined, firmness of purpose, right? Determination. I was determined despite being told it probably wouldn't happen. Lung damage, Harold, you've had severe smoke inhalation, lung damage, probably not going to happen. But I was determined to get back into sports. When I got out of the hospital in late July to early August of '88, we jumped in that my mom's old Saturn car and rolled
Right.
down the roof, rolled down the road to E-Town and pulled in the driveway and this was my new normal, right? But I knew that sports was something I had to get back into. And so to sort of fast forward and just to put it in a box, I had a lot of PT and a lot of rehab, but my mindset was I got to get back into sports. And so I entered my freshman year at North Hardin High School. Wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready. So I didn't play any sports my freshman year. My sophomore year, I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I can try out for the soccer team here. Okay. Yeah. And so I tried out for the soccer team and I made it. I made it, right? But I made the JV team. And that wasn't good enough for me. But I made the team. But I got a taste of success. I got to take, and there's some things driving me this whole time, right? Having that purpose and things outside of yourself. Things outside of yourself. It's got to be something driving you, and everything's driving me. So sophomore year, I played JV soccer, wasn't enough. Junior year, I come back, play soccer again in North Hardin High School. I'm the second leading scorer on our team as a forward on the soccer team. My senior year, I come back again. I decide, you know what? I need more. I'm going to try to run track. I know I had smoke inhalation. Who cares? Right? Who cares? I'm going to run track. I went out for the track team. I made the track team. I ran the 100, the 200, the 400, the 4x1 relay, and I did the high jump. And as a team, we were state champs that year in the state of Kentucky. And I wasn't done there. I caught word that our high school team needed a kicker. And I was like, I've never kicked a football, but so what? So what? Right.
Somewhere
Um,
Andy's laughing at you putting on those pads, man, that helmet and kicking that ball.
that's that's exactly right. Andy was like, man, I tried to get you to do this back and you're gonna do it now. What's up? What's up with that, man? So I'd never kicked a football, but I said, so what? And I'm doing it. And I was the starting kicker on our football team. And was an all-district kicker that year.
It's important to recognize to be a three-star athlete is almost impossible, period. This kid has endured the kind of trauma that most of us can't fathom and has the scars to show it.
Yeah.
And in the midst of the agony and the brokenness and the grief, he tries out for JV soccer, barely makes it his sophomore year. And by senior year, he's all state in soccer. He tries out for track on a whim. And by senior year, they're winning state in track. And in part to honor the legacy of his brother who's no longer with him, his friend Andy. He tries out for football, becomes a kicker, and I'm just going to keep speeding through this thing. You get an opportunity to not only graduate high school, congratulations, but to go on to the University of Louisville to play sports in college at Louisville. Like,
Yeah.
if it ends there, it's a wild story. You're playing soccer, but you get this tug on your heart to not only go to the school where you and Andy always loved as kids growing up, the University of Kentucky, but to strive to play what sport there?
Well, football.
Dude, I mean, SEC football, and you're like, yeah, I guess I could try that. So, I mean, I know we're speeding through years of your life that were formative, but a coach takes a flyer on you, you walk on, and you make the team as what position?
I make the team as a kicker initially. Bill Curry, one of my favorite human beings on the planet, took a chance on me. He took a chance on an undersized, fragile, determined soccer player. He took a chance and gave me an opportunity as a kicker on the football team. One day at practice, I'm kicking off to the starting kickoff return team. The kickoff returner catches the ball. This is in practice, summer practice, my first year there. Kickoff returner catches the ball. He makes his way through our kickoff coverage team. He's about to score a touchdown. I have the angle on him. I sprint over there. Boom, I make this tackle as the kicker. Okay, last line of defense. And our special teams coach, Bill Glazer, is screaming, jumping up and down. And he goes, "Woo, we're going to have the fastest kicker in the Southeastern Conference. We're going to have the fastest kicker in the SEC." And so from that moment, they had other plans for me. And so I had gone through so much and realized my dream of living out Andy's dream,
Yeah.
living out Andy's dream, and was able to letter for 3 years on the University of Kentucky football team in the SEC, blessed with, honored with many, many, many awards that I don't take the credit for. I continuously give credit where credit is due, and that's others driving me. That's Andy driving me. That's my faith driving me. So many things allowing me to be in that position to play that sport once and for all. Live out Andy's dream.
I'm just going to ramble through a few of the awards you've received and then ask you a more broad question. So, the Everett Award for Courage in Sports. I'm interviewing the recipient of that. The Gene Autry Award for Courage in Sports. You're hearing the testimony of that guy who received it. The Johnny Unitas Courage Award in Sports. 1996, the Olympics are held in Atlanta, Georgia. We're currently speaking to one of the individuals who ran with that torch through the streets of Atlanta. You've had some incredible success. I know you sometimes almost refer to yourself as a phoenix. Being reduced to ashes is ultimately what allowed you to soar in life. It's an incredible analogy.
Mhm.
You also eventually find love. This little boy who lost his best buddy, who's dealing with grief, dealing with physical agony, looks in the mirror and screams. I can't imagine what your mother heard that day, but she heard that scream and she knew that that boy had every right to scream. And yet you eventually find not only the confidence in yourself, but you find the beauty in someone else who sees perfect beauty back in you. Talk about finding love.
In this story, John, in my life, there are heroes beyond myself, and Donna is one of them. She's the real hero. She was able to see beyond the exterior, see beyond the scars, and look in the eyes, my eyes, and into my soul, and let me in
Mm.
hers. This was my 1994, 95, my sophomore to junior year at University of Kentucky. I was home for Thanksgiving weekend. There was one place that we would all go in Fort Knox to hang out, listen to some music. In the officers club that day was a young lady who caught my eye, and I asked her to dance, and she did. And the rest, the rest is history. But Donna and I met in, like I said, 1994, five, and we dated off and on the long distance because she was a couple years younger than me, and she was off in school in Louisville, and I'm in Lexington. We eventually married in 2000, and still married today, 25 years later. I want the listeners to put themselves in our wives' shoes. You know, we live in such a superficial world, right? We live in such a world that beauty is glamorized, right? And what is beauty, right? It's so subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder, and it's cliche, but it's true. But put yourself in their shoes, and would we be able to look beyond the exterior, the scars of someone, and allow them in? And there are probably some people who would be honest with themselves and say, I don't know if I would,
Right.
just because we have some shallow people in this world. And and in some regards, myself included, I don't
Sure.
remove myself from that at all. But for Donna to be able to do that, and accept me and love me was refreshing and validating and life changing for me.
Mm. I'm going to ask you in a moment about forgiveness. And yet before I do, I think it would have been difficult for Donna to love a man who did not love himself. And I
Mm,
think what she saw in this kid listening
mm,
to music at some bar, Fort
mhm.
Knox, was a man who was confident enough to go back to sports, to get back into life, to strive to climb in spite of the struggles that were trying to pull him down. So she saw a man who was incredibly attractive, even if he bore some scars from the past. And that's what I look at right now as I see you on the screen in front of me. So, my friend, you were on the way home from the trip of a lifetime, and someone else's actions stole the life of 27 individuals on that bus ride with you. They stole seemingly the future of the survivors. They caused unbelievable grief in your community and in your life going forward. Just talk to me broadly about forgiveness and what does that look like for you today?
Forgiveness is forgiveness is difficult. I'm going to be honest at first. Forgiveness is difficult. To forget is difficult, but to forgive took a long time, right? As you know, I created a documentary about the crash, myself and three partners, a writer, cinematographer, and a director. And I said to myself, I would never let these lives be lost in vain. And part of this documentary, Impact After the Crash, was forgiveness.
Yeah.
I had to, not only the families, the other families had to forgive, to be open enough to tell our stories. We wanted Larry Mahoney to be part of this documentary. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about forgiveness. I wrote a letter to Larry Mahoney telling him that I forgave him. And we were doing a film, and we wanted to share this film with the world. And who better to have a testimony of forgiveness than him, the person
Yeah.
who caused the worst drunk driving crash in American history, to tell his story? Who better than him? And I was connected with his brother-in-law, and we had breakfast one morning, and I gave him the letter. He took it back to Larry, and we met for breakfast again a week or so later. And he said to me, he said, Harold, I gave this letter to Larry, and he opened it up and he read it. And that letter was me telling Larry I forgave him and wanted him to tell his story. And Larry folds the letter back up and he hands it back to his brother-in-law. He tries to, and his brother-in-law says, doesn't have my name on it. That's
Mm.
yours. And so he declined being part of the film, the documentary. But I
Yeah.
say all that to say I had to forgive him to release myself. I had to forgive him to openly tell this story in the documentary, tell the story to the world. By forgiving him, I had to not only say it out loud, but I had to let him know.
Mm.
And I can rest eternally knowing that I let him know that I forgave him for what he caused.
Man, I'm so struck by not only your audacity in forgiving, which is so hard to do, but someone else's inability to receive it. And then while you were
Mm,
talking there, for whatever reason, I'm thinking about Judas and Peter. You know, in some regards, they both betrayed Jesus, regardless of our faith backgrounds on this episode. Like they both betrayed Jesus, and one of them was able to receive the forgiveness Jesus gave, and the other one wasn't. And their lives afterwards are profoundly different.
mm,
And man, my hope for Larry is that one day he reads that letter and he receives that forgiveness from you, and his heart just is set ablaze, man. Like what a
that's
testimony that would be if you and your brother Larry are walking through the streets together, hand in hand, like forgiving life over the mistakes we've all made. And so you can't control that piece, but I think that would be a powerful story one day. It's my hope and prayer that that happens. For those right now
yeah.
struggling in their own inability to forgive or to receive that forgiveness, what's your advice to them? Now you're not looking in the mirror, you're not looking at Larry, you're looking at this audience of ours that are listening to this incredible story of yours, and they are struggling with the inability to either give forgiveness or to receive it. What's your encouragement to them?
Find hope. Find hope. Find and hold on to hope in things outside and beyond yourself. Find a place that you want to get to, because the place that you're in is holding you back.
Ooh,
The inability to forgive is holding you back. The space between where we are and where we want to be, right? And that's fear. Okay. It's natural. It's a natural emotion, but overcome that fear and have hope. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about hope and faith. November 13th, 2011. This was several years, obviously, after the crash. I was asked to speak at a church. And for many years, I had rejected speaking at churches because I just didn't want, I knew I was struggling in my own faith, in my own, still struggling, at that time, still trying to understand. So I didn't, in my public speaking days, I just didn't want to do churches. But the pastor, John Weiss, met me for breakfast one morning. Harold, we have a series on hope, and
ooh.
I want you to speak about hope. And I agreed to do it. And so, big church, Southland Christian Church, is kind of a mega church here in Lexington. And I spoke at three services in the morning, exhausted, pouring my heart out, pouring my faith out, something I hadn't done a lot of. And my family goes to brunch after that talk. My wife goes in to get a table. My two younger kids get out and go sit down on the sidewalk to play checkers at Cracker. I hear over the intercom, Dennis, party of five, your table's ready. Myself and my older daughter, we get out of the car. We walk toward the sidewalk. I get Trey and Kylie, my younger two, up from the checkers table. We start to walk into the doors of Cracker Barrel, and a car plows over the curb, over the sidewalk, crushes the table they were just sitting at. We were not even in the restaurant yet. It crushes the table they were sitting at and starts to skid down the side of the restaurant. I grab them, find a nearby bench, sit down. My wife Donna comes out screaming, looking for us. And we sit on that bench and I just cry. I just cry. And the only thing I could think about was hope, was the message of hope that I had given three times that morning, and poured my heart out and didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I allowed myself to overcome that fear and find hope beyond myself, tell my story, and believe what you want. But I know when I heard Dennis Party Five, your table's ready, if I would have flinched, I would have watched that car hit my kids sitting there playing checkers. Call it divine intervention, call it what you want. But I maintain that me giving myself to something else that day played a part. To answer your question, for people to allow themselves to have the hope to be somewhere that they want to be ultimately.
Oh man, when you hear your name called, go. Pick up your mat and go. Dennis
That's
party of five, gets out of the car with his daughter, grabs the two babies, and goes. And my friend, that's one of the takeaways from this remarkable conversation with this remarkable man, Harold Dennis. Harold, we have 7 questions. We tether all of our guests what they're called the Live Inspired Seven. So question number one is what's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
I like to read nonfiction. I like to read books. I like to read self-help and leadership books. And I'm going to say the most impactful book I've read is Atomic Habits, James Clear.
What's one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a little kid growing up that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today?
Man, I'd say just to let go of things, carefree. Just don't get so caught up in things that the little young boy in the Mazda mobile home park could just go run up and down the streets and be carefree. And I think, the 51-year-old Harold can just get caught up in a lot of stuff sometimes and
Yeah.
just go back to being 9 years old and just let go.
Man, when I see you, I see these little houses all around you. I see a bunch of kids around you. I see Andy next to you, and I see a bunch of kids on a bike, kind of bouncing the ball back and forth as you do when you're a kid on the way to a field just to mess around. Like that, that is a beautiful whisper of carefree childhood living, and it's free.
It's
It's free.
free.
All right, brother. Question number three. If your home caught fire and your family's all out and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item, one physical thing, what's that one physical thing you would grab?
We have a safe in the closet, right? And it's small enough to carry and it's got some valuable things in there and it would probably make it through the fire. But I may run in and grab that safe and carry that sucker out of there.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you want to be next to?
It's got to be Andy.
I wondered.
I thought that was maybe a layup, but I tried to go outside of that, but I can't. Obviously, um, if the book is written one day, it's going to be in first person to him. And if I had a chance to sit on a bench and talk to him, I would have a lot to say.
I look forward to hearing that conversation and reading that book. What's the best advice Andy, your mom, some coach, or anybody else ever gave you? So the best advice you've ever received, Harold Dennis, is
I'm going to say some of the best advice I've ever received came from my college football coach, Bill Curry. Coach Curry he always talked about the types of pain in life, right? And so I think we know this, but he was really big on discipline and two types of pain in life, the pain of discipline and the pain of regret.
mm,
Okay, you choose. You choose the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And that's I hold that. I take that with me. I took
that's
that with
good.
me. Yeah,
What advice would you give yourself at age 20?
it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. You got this.
Harold Dennis, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
Errol was thrust into a scenario of which he had no control, and somehow, by the grace of God, somebody, something, he came through it, and others were not so fortunate. He made it his life's mission that those who were not so fortunate would not be lost in vain, and just wants to continue to live that life, inspiring and leaving footprints.
Mm, man, that is a great sentence. I don't know how many commas you have in there, but I'm
Uh,
lousy in grammar, so I think it counts as a single sentence. Harold was thrust into a situation of which he did not choose and seemingly had no control, but he embraced what he could. He lived a life that was meaningful for those who no longer could live their lives. He moved towards success and significance faithfully and left footprints along the way that you and I can follow, my friends. That is a meaningful, good life seared into his life through tragedy. Harold Dennis,
mm,
I want to appreciate you, man, for climbing out of that bus and into life. It has been such an example to the rest of us who so often stay where we are rather than embrace the next right step in the journey. So, brother, thank you for
Hmm.
hearing the call. Thank you for responding to it. And thank you for reminding the rest of us that we can too. My friends, that is the story and the testimony of my friend Harold Dennis. My name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift it is. Live with your soul on fire.